Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of ancient Vedic wisdom that, honestly, feels incredibly relevant right now, especially with our modern struggles with burnout, exhaustion, and just the constant hustle of it all. We're going to dive into a text that outlines the 6 obstacles to devotional service. And what it does is translate these ancient Sanskrit concepts into just a brilliant framework for understanding exactly why we feel so overwhelmed today. So think about this for a second. Why do humans hoard more than they need, right? It's a deceptively simple question, but this text argues it's actually the root of human suffering. We are constantly driven to collect, to consume, and to achieve way beyond our basic necessities. And this ancient philosophy claims that this specific drive is exactly what creates our endless anxiety. Okay, let's just dive right into this. We'll start with the macro worldview, the purpose of human life. Then we'll look at the 6 spiritual obstacles, focus in on the trap of over-collecting, apply that to capitalism, communism, and wealth, explore a really cool $100 bill analogy, and finally end with the text's ultimate solution, plain living, high thinking. All right, section 1, the purpose of human life. Now, before we can really look at our day-to-day behaviors, we've got to understand the macro worldview this text presents. According to this philosophy, the universe operates on 3 primary energies. First, there's the internal potency. That's the divine, spiritual realm. Then you've got the external potency, which is the material world of illusion and suffering. And right in the middle, that's the marginal potency. That's us. We are the living entities. The text argues that humans are eternally situated right between these 2 forces, literally caught in this profound tug-of-war. And because we are that marginal energy, we actually have a choice. The text compares 2 types of people here. The Mahatma, or the broad-minded person, focuses their energy on spiritual service. They operate under that divine energy. But in stark contrast, you have the Dharma, the cripple-minded person. This is someone entirely controlled by the external material world. And it's interesting because even if they're building this massive, impressive legacy, the text argues it's actually still just extended sense gratification. Being trapped in that material focus inevitably subjects us to what they call the threefold miseries of life. Moving on to section 2, the 6 spiritual obstacles. So shifting from that macro view down to the micro view, the text explicitly lists 6 behavioral traps that completely spoil our spiritual purpose. Number 1 is ati-āhāraḥ, which is over-collecting or overeating. 2 is prayasaḥ, over-endeavoring for mundane things. 3 is prajalpa, unnecessary idle talk. 4 is niyamāgrahaḥ, and that basically means either blindly following rules or just whimsically neglecting them. 5 is jana-saṅgaḥ, associating with worldly-minded people. And 6 is laulyaṁ, pure greed. These are the specific roadblocks to our human potential. Now, what's genuinely fascinating here, and I absolutely love this, is how perfectly these ancient warnings describe our modern crisis of burnout. Take prajalpa, for instance. The text talks about reading heaps of newspapers and talking nonsense like croaking toads. I mean, today, we'd literally call that doom scrolling and endless social media debates. Or look at laulyaṁ, the endless greed for mundane achievements. We completely exhaust ourselves on the treadmill of status, exactly as this text warned centuries ago. Which brings us to section 3, the trap of over-collecting. Out of all those 6 obstacles we just looked at, the text emphasizes the very first one as being absolutely destructive. Atyāhāraḥ. Literally, this means eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required for your basic needs. The text states unequivocally that the entire world is suffering right now because of this specific urge. We misuse our higher intelligence, not to realize our spiritual potential, but to invent these exhausting new ways to accumulate unwanted things. And to really highlight the unnatural reality of our hoarding, the text offers this powerful analogy. Imagine you leave a bag of rice in a public place. A bird will fly down, eat a few grains, literally just what it needs, and then fly away. A human will take the entire bag, eat until their stomach physically hurts, and then try to lock the rest away in storage. In nature, there is generally no economic scarcity. Scarcity is a uniquely human invention, driven entirely by atyāhāraḥ. Okay, section 4, capitalism, communism, and wealth. Zooming back out to the macro level, the source material makes a really fascinating and absolutely impartial observation about global politics. It states, and I quote, "Modern warfare waged between capitalists and communists is due to their avoiding the advice regarding atyāhāraḥ." So the philosophy here views major economic conflicts not primarily as a failure of policy, but as a direct result of ignoring spiritual boundaries on wealth. It actually critiques both systems with complete neutrality. It notes that modern capitalists accumulate far more wealth than necessary. But conversely, communists see this prosperity and want to nationalize property. The text argues that simply transferring wealth around doesn't actually solve anything, because both systems are fundamentally focused on material sense gratification. According to this ancient perspective, whenever anyone takes more than their basic maintenance requires, they are essentially acting as a thief, claiming ownership over resources that do not actually belong to them. Let's look at Section 5, the $100 bill analogy. Because if neither human economic system gets it right, well, who truly owns the wealth of the world? To answer this, the text offers a brilliant little thought experiment. Imagine a $100 bill is just lying on the street. Now the thief picks it up to spend on himself. The neglector sees it, decides he shouldn't touch another person's property, and just leaves it there. But finally, the wise man picks it up, tracks down the person who lost it, and returns it. The wise man represents the ideal spiritual society here. He doesn't falsely claim the wealth, but he also doesn't just ignore it. He utilizes it properly by returning it to its original owner, which in this philosophy is the Supreme Lord. The core philosophical argument here is that all human systems fail because they falsely claim ownership over the world's resources. The text explicitly states that the wealth of the world actually belongs to the Supreme Lord. We as humans only have a birthright to use what is strictly set aside as our quote-unquote quota, the bare necessities required for our maintenance, and absolutely nothing more. And finally, Section 6, plain living, high thinking. This profound shift in perspective offers us a very actionable solution. The foundational blueprint for a peaceful society is found in this quote from the ancient Ishopanishad. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself and should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. If we respected this quota, the text argues, nature's arrangement would easily provide enough for everyone. So the real takeaway here is that by systematically eliminating those 6 obstacles, especially that exhausting urge to over-collect, and by accepting only our true quota, we make room for something incredible. We achieve plain living and high thinking. The text basically promises that when human society gives up the fault of taking more than it needs, all worldly enmity will cease. Letting go of those artificial material needs frees up our intelligence for profound spiritual realization and, honestly, actual global peace. We've covered a lot of ground today, right? From the macro potencies of the universe down to that bird taking a single grain of rice. So I want to leave you with this final thought to consider. How might adopting the philosophy of plain living and high thinking change your own daily routine? Think about what artificial needs you might be endlessly striving for and what mental space you could get back by simply letting them go. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I really hope this ancient wisdom gives you some much-needed clarity today.